Hi everyone, welcome to ST Skills. Um, this is a weekly system design session, and like we normally have an alternate sessions every week. This week we are going to have a mock interview. I'm going to act as a interviewer, and Sujit is going to act as an interviewee. And like if you would like to sign up for these sessions, like please ping me or Asim in the Discord channel. Um, with that, we will get started with the mock interview today. Sujit, do you want to like briefly give your experience, or like we can just start it? Um,
Sure. Let me quickly go through my experience. Thanks, Naga, for organizing this. My name is Sujit, and I work as a senior software engineer at Coles. I'm currently working in the machine learning domain. Previous to this, I have worked in Samsung as well as Brocade Lumina Networks as a machine learning engineer in the field of computer vision and NLP. And I worked a couple of years at Ericsson as a software engineer. And yeah, I'm pretty much looking for a challenging role in the field of computer vision or NLP.
okay, thank you. So today, let's design a system Google Calendar.
Okay, sure. Um, Great.
Mm.
So, are there any other specific functionalities that you are looking here?
Yeah, many things. I mean, like just like how
Mhm.
what according to you can be handled in Google Calendar. It should be able to
Okay,
um, it should be able to book the meetings and view the other person's availability. Um,
okay,
it'll remind me whenever I have a meeting, like prior to like 15 minutes or something.
okay. Makes sense. Reminders
Mm.
for meetings. Okay. So in general, Google calendars, right? So what we do is, let's say there are like two persons and there
Mhm,
is an organization. I open my Google Calendar application and I
mm,
will try to add a person as a possibly a guest, a single guest or a multiple guest, and
mhm,
then try to see whether his time availability calendar,
mhm,
and see if there are any basically conflicts, and if there are not any conflicts, possibly I will add some um, web link or something like that. And uh, once I do that, I will possibly send an um, invite. So, which is basically booking a meeting, and I will request for an RSVP. And depending on that, like yes, no, or maybe, I will be able to continue or basically reschedule the meeting. So this is um, what I see on a Google Calendar. So I assume this is the application that which we are going to build today. Is that true?
Um, yes. So yeah, I mean, like I told meetings, I mean, like it need not have conferencing web links as such.
Okay, okay.
That generating that is not part of this scope in this design, but
Okay,
you can add optionally, like if you are,
okay,
that's
sure.
okay. That's an
Okay,
optional one. Mhm.
great. Thank you.
It's like
Um,
meetings or appointments, or in general, if you want to block yourself, also that's okay.
Makes sense. Mm. Okay, it can be an appointment too. So
Mhm.
that makes sense. Okay, thinking in terms of like design constraints, I'm just thinking loud over here. Mm, as in, we should be able to. Okay, I think like we should we able to like double book the users, or should we able to only book only one time one meeting for a one user at particular time? Um, Double
Mm,
bookings. I mean, so let's say like we generally have like a 24 hours of time, right?
mm,
Or you
mm,
even getting in the terms of a design constraints of an application itself.
mm.
Each user will have an account, and possibly, so are we designing anything specific to an organization, or are we designing a personal Google Calendar for general individuals?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I let's say we are doing for a organization.
Oh, okay, great. So basically, since we are doing it for an organization, uh, possibly we will have like a different aliases or the emails, and we should be able to look up those emails for um, lookup email aliases that which we will be defining possibly, and coming back to the each user account, right? Each user account is given a calendar interface, and he should be able to book a slot. So thinking in terms of design constraints, um, it is more of a, if I were to send one invite to others and other users will be sending an invite to others. So I am thinking it is like 1:1 where I will read to write ratio. So the number of a user will be able to invite one, and he should be able to accept one. Given the time frame, it is like 1:1 ratio. So we need to maintain like a uh, it should be, I'm thinking in terms of consistency, available, partition, tolerant
So,
mechanism.
okay,
So,
1:1 means like read slash write ratio. Like
yep,
is that
yeah,
okay?
yeah, sorry. And thinking in terms of availability, yeah, I mean, so calendar should always be available. So as to make sure, uh, that particular slot is, others know that the particular slot is booked or not. Coming to the terms of consistency, like I would I would give like a availability a little bit more preference. It is more of an AP system. Um, so at the cost of consistency, I will go ahead with the availability. And as far as the number of users, so do we have any idea on how many number of users that we are aiming for? Maybe like thousands, or like 10,000s, or maybe millions?
Let's say 100,000.
Okay, 100K of use.
Mm,
Definitely, as soon as I send an invite, I shouldn't see any one of the. I should be able to. Um, I should be able to send an invite possibly to the other user, and I see that there should be like a low latency, but I don't think it is very important. But we can comb through the constraints as and when needed. So these are some of the things which I think as design constraints. Maybe okay, since there are like 100K users, right? And let's say each user is building like 4 events. If he is booking like possibly, let's say for rough estimate, right? Let's
Mhm.
say he's booking like 10 events, and each event can be of any time slot. So the time slot doesn't make much difference over here. It can be 30 minutes or it can be 1 hour.
Mhm.
And we are anywhere looking at around like 500K events.
Per what? Per what time?
Um,
Is it
sure,
like per week or
500.
day?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is 500K events per day. Or like if you are going with the API, like we should be able to make like 500K calls per day. So I think this is good for like a design constraints thinking. I'm just moving ahead with the API modeling. Let me know if you're okay with it.
Um, yeah. So on, I didn't fully catch like when you say 1:1 read rate ratio, like on what context did you think like when you set up a meeting, like each time when the calendar is viewed by someone,
Mm-hmm.
is it like do you count as a read or like are you going to cache something? Like how did you come up with 1:1 read? Is it just an approximation?
Okay, so I'm just trying to fit it into a bucket where if it is very read heavy system or write heavy system,
Hmm.
thinking in terms of like once I send a calendar invite, usually people will write sending a calendar invite is treated as like a write,
Hmm.
um, and which is the right, and basically accepting as well as like at the time of the meeting I will be just I will just view the content, right, and then I will go to the calendar, which is I call it as read. Pretty much this will be like a order of the number of invitees, and this will be like a only order of the number of schedulers basically. So when I say 1:1, like it can be like 1:10 or like 1:5, but it is not so skewed in terms of whether if it is very read heavy or write heavy system. But
Okay.
that's a, I mean, probably we can put it like 1:10 or like whatever is the, assuming that each invite has like a 10 people
Yeah, that's
approximately.
okay. Just wanted to
Okay.
understand the thought process, like not specific about the numbers.
Sure, sure.
Mhm.
Great.
Mhm.
Then, okay, so jumping on to the API designs, right? Um,
And
Please go ahead.
yeah, sorry to cut you, but like the on the availability versus consistency, like your thought process was the availability is more important, but not consistency, right?
The reason behind it is like, let's say I'm sending a calendar invite. Um, uh,
Yeah,
when
that's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, tell me like
Sure. Yeah.
mm,
So when I'm sending a calendar invite, at least that particular calendar invite should be available to all of them.
mhm,
Maybe at the cost of like 10 seconds or like a minute delay to others.
mhm,
Because whenever I write a post or write a calendar invite, whenever all of the users need not get the same invite at the same time, but
mm.
I want to make sure whoever gets it, it should be available all of the time. So that is the reasoning behind it.
Okay, okay, got it. Yeah, we can revisit that later also. So yeah, let's go with API design.
Sure. um, Basically I will be having like couple of APIs. The first API which I can think is like um, write add an invite, right? uh, Post, possibly post invite. um, okay, we can put it like an okay. So this is basically where we write, and the other one is like a read invite, calendar invite. So during the post invite, what all I can think here is like whatever is the, we need an user ID, whoever is like writing the uh,
Mm-hmm.
invite, and we need the post ID or preferably the event ID, and event ID and whatever the event content, right? Um, Event content and whatever all the invitee list. And since we are not worried about, okay, so this should be the invitee list and possibly the timings, right? Timing, basically time start, time end. So, and or we need just like a duration probably rather than a time end. Uh, okay, so these are the user ID event with a, for a given user ID, I'm sending whether if it is an appointment. So the basically just digging into a little bit, right? So user
Mm-hmm.
ID, it can be for a given user ID. It can be just a 4 byte, uh, 4 byte, which means that I should be able to accommodate like 4 billion users. So that is like very good given our organization consists of only 100K. We can downsize it to 2 byte. Um, so on getting on with the event ID. So since there are like 500K events per day, we should be able to like do something like this is for a let's say for an year. We are not. We should be able to look up our email events for the like a past year. I should be able to store all these. So we are looking anywhere between uh, like 1.5. This is like 1.5K and into like 100K. So I think even a four byte is like good enough, or like even that is like a little bit of an extra. So let me go simply with the 4 byte, and event content. It possibly it will be a JSON where I will have all the details of the event and some things like maybe agenda or something like a prereqs or whatever the content that is required for it. And invitee list, um, I think I should possibly have the invitee list within the event content. I think I don't need anything different from it, so let me push it onto the invitee list in my event content.
What's the
And
reason for that?
huh, so um, so because whatever the event content, right? So what is event content? It will contain the specific. There is okay. The reason behind it having in the JSON format is like it can be a list and it can be one invitee, one candidate, or it can be n candidates.
Mm-hmm.
um, and at the same time it can be a null actually, because if it is an appointment we should be able to like invite no one but except us, basically blocking a calendar in that case where invitee is self. It, yeah, then the length will be one. So there is the reason why I go with the JSON here is like whatever the event details, it should be stored in a single data structure object rather than having a more multiple arguments. So, but I don't have any very particular reason beyond that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Then coming with the start time, right? Timestamp is basically it goes with like a 4 byte data structure that is pretty standard, and duration is just an integer, so that will take only like We can call it maybe like we don't even need long actually, so it should be 2 bytes. So anywhere we are looking at around something like possibly assuming that event content, it will take a maximum of like uh, possibly 50 bytes. So assuming that the agenda and description of the event and all of the things are assigned, as well as if there is any attachments to it, then that is going to be pretty heavy.
So,
Um,
so like, are you trying to come up with an estimate for storing this?
yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
So let's go ahead with the maximum size. I'm not dealing anything with the attachments right now. Maybe we can revisit or look up at the end.
Okay.
But if okay,
And
so we have to look. Go
did
ahead.
you type like 4 billion users? Like, is that like a random number or like is that derived by something?
So it is derived from the 4 byte, right? So usually the 4 byte will take around like 4 into 8, right? So number of bits. So there are like 32 bits. So
Mhm.
and out of 32 bits, I should be able to do it like 2 power 32, which is like approximately 4 billion users.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are looking anywhere around like 100 bytes. So this
Mhm.
is like not a very heavy write API. So jumping on to the maximum of 100 bytes and jumping onto the read invite, right? As
Yeah,
far as
just a
read in,
small comment. I think even content may be a little low, but that's okay. We can proceed right now
okay,
and yeah.
okay. So yeah, if we can possibly downsize it to half actually, if
Yeah.
we are thinking. So yeah, even if it is like
No, no, no.
30 bytes.
I meant it's a little greater than 50 in reality, but like that's okay. We don't need to worry.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So okay, that's good.
Mhm.
Um, read invite, right? So once I basically based on that particular event ID.
Just a
Uh,
question. So, are you assuming that now client generates the event ID here, like because you have that in the API itself?
huh.
How does
So
client know the event ID?
um,
I just know like for me, like what are all the events? That's what like just as a user.
yeah, that's a good one. So as a user, I know as a user, I know the my user ID, and I should be able to randomly generate an event. Okay. So I'm just thinking loud over here. There are two
Mm.
possibilities. The first possibility is like I should be whenever I click on a create button, basically it can generate a random sequence number, and that can be an event ID itself. But we should make sure that it is not being used by any other event at the same time. And the second way of dealing it here is like we can post the invite, and once the invite is posted, we can generate a event ID at the server level, and we should be able to get the we should be able to generate an event ID. So fixing it in the server,
Mm.
once we have a event ID at the server level, we should be able to look up. How do we look up then? Okay,
All
we
I
go.
all I say is like for me, what are all the calendar for today? Like when you see calendar for a week, so you
Mhm.
just pull all like for this week, what are all the events that I have? So I think technically, I think it's just the user ID which is the input. So rest, I think you need to deal in the server. But like, tell me,
Uh,
what's your thought process here?
okay, okay. So for the reading, definitely, maybe if you want to check basically calendar based on a duration, right? Or like maybe yeah, basically duration or duration can be like a week or day, and basically if you want, we should be able to huh. Based in a duration and so the read.
Start
So we are talking about
start
the
of
read
the,
invite, right?
yeah, correct.
Okay, so for the read invite, I should be able to go to my calendar application and see it in a today or like on a weekly basis, and I should be able to click on an event, and I can should be able to read it. So for that purpose, what I'm thinking is for a given duration, and for whatever is the start time,
Hmm.
I should be able to look up all the events. So
Also give also the user ID. Yeah.
yes, yeah. So for
So
a given, so I
yeah,
should
let's
be
start
able
with
to,
that. What are you going to return in the read invite? Can
yep,
you give me the response?
sure. The return will be the event content details as well as the uh, for a given I should be able to return the event ID, the content details.
Hmm.
That should do as a return for my read invite. And with this details, he should be able to navigate further and join the conference.
So how do I know the start time, end time, which day? I mean, like the
Huh. Okay, so I think since the event content doesn't have those details,
yeah, and for
okay,
simplicity, let's split the attendees separately. So
okay,
out
yep.
of
Uh, 10 days. Okay. So fine. We don't right now for just RSVPing purposes, we should be able to see them. That also makes sense. And we should be when he's reading, he should be able to check those. Also, he should be able to check the
start
start
and
time
end time.
and the
Yeah,
duration.
duration. That's okay.
So okay, yep. I think this should be good for now. And anywhere we are looking at around like uh, similar bite size data storage, even for the read API.
And
Um,
do you know like where are you tracking like whether a certain attendee accepted your invite or not? RSVP status or like just general
yes.
acceptance status?
So for that, um, yeah, possibly,
It should be
can we
included
rely
in
on?
the response, right? In the read invite.
Um, so the read invite, and once the read invite is hit, we will return all those, and then we should be able to click. I think I'm leaning towards having another API for that.
Okay.
The reason, yeah, the reason behind it is like send RSVP. So for a given event ID and for a given user ID, I should
Mm.
be able to send a boolean or whatever the status actually. Um, I'm thinking more in terms of this, and it it need not return. Basically, it need not return anything. So um, if is does this make sense? Like user can view the post basically,
Mm-hmm.
and once he views the post, and he should be able to click on that RSVP. It can be
Mm-hmm.
yes, no, or maybe, and it is particular to that event ID and user ID.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, so on the data modeling, I think we almost are good with it. Like, but let me just write in high level. So how I would be storing it in the database.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than storing it based on the user ID, possibly I would lean towards storing it based on the event ID because that would be an easier lookup. Because one event might contain many attendees or invitee. So basically, who is the owner Should I need a owner? Okay, let me pretend for now that I need a owner, and then invitee list, and then the content, right? Event content as well as the start and duration. So this should give me a pretty good idea on my data, whatever the
Okay,
uh,
um, so in terms of duration, like, are you going to allow all kinds of durations, or like, what are some of the specific values that you are considering?
Sure. Um, that's a good one. So usually, if I were to look in the Google Calendar, right, it will show me like 10 minutes or a 15 minutes of time addition, but it won't maybe like 5 minutes. But what I would try to do here is like I will try to have the availability in increments of the 5 minutes. It can be like 5 minutes up to like 1 hour, 60 minutes, and then it can basically it is an increment of 5 minutes, and the long maybe we can't have a meeting for more than a day or an maybe couple of days or couple of weeks. If it is like a vacation, we should be able to block it for a week, but the upper maximum can we can negotiate with the client on what is his requirement.
So let's say we are not considering vacations for now in this calendar.
Mhm.
So what's the maximum you want to allow?
So let's say we have like some training schedule. So maybe it goes for like a couple of days. So I will, for easier purposes, I will put it a maximum of like 3 days or maximum of a week. So
Okay, so when you say week, how are you going to show it in your calendar? I mean, like, if someone like,
uh,
is there a specific time, work timings in the day you
yes.
show?
Mhm. Sure, that's a good one. So give for a given day, possibly it will be like an 8 hours schedule, and we should be able to show like out of office hours notification, which is an enhancement which I'm not digging into it right now. And for a given week, he should be can only schedule like a 40 hours a week. So it can go anywhere from as little as 5 minutes to as maximum as 40 hours in a week.
Hmm.
Okay. Hmm. Yeah, I think I will have this table, and possibly I will have another table with RSVP list. So for a given event ID and for a given user ID, what is the RSVP status? So for making things simpler.
Okay, you
Um,
have one for events and one for RSVP, and
um,
mm, that's it, right? Or like, is there
yeah,
anything? Okay,
that's it. That's it for now. Yeah.
okay, okay. Let's go with high level design. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So, jumping onto the high level design, let me use this. Okay. So, there are like two. So basically, let's pretend that the user who there can be like two types of users. One is like who is who is an invitee, and who is like an um, uh, whatever the owner or like author or like even creator, right? Who is like a creator. So user can be an invitee or user can be a creator or he can be both actually. So we are thinking in terms of a service, possibly where um, event handler service probably. Uh, So what it does is like a user will be interacting directly through an API gateway, and even the handler service will have its own like a load balancer. Given that we are hitting like 500K events per day, And possibly if we want to, since we are right now designing only a system which is very simple, and it doesn't need to scale right now, but we will be scaling it a little bit later. So to make things very simple, I will be having I can push everything into a queuing mechanism, and then have it stored in a DB. So I'm looking anywhere something like let me go ahead with so if we are not heavy on the messages, right? So 500K events, I think we can simply get away with an REST API call. So let me directly go ahead and have my DB interface, which can be, when I mean by DB, it can be of preferably a faster read or write access, which means that in this case, like a regular key value pair should do. Uh, so I would, okay, let me just, okay. Mm,
Okay, so what is going to be your key? I mean, like, so between which database do you think are you decided with key value pair? Like the reason behind that? What's
Yeah, so possibly like we will be going with the table, right? So the
mhm,
key will be like an event ID, and the value will be all the details that we have just so the value can be all the event content, attendees, and the start, and so on and so forth. So I will be having an another table
mhm,
because like if I want to look up based
mm,
on a week or based on a day, I should be able to also generate the chart or a dashboard to the user. So I
mhm.
think I will be having an another table with the key of like a start time, and once I give like a today at 12 o'clock, I should be able to look up for like next a week or so. So given a start time, I should be given a start time. So I'm just thinking loud over here if I
Mm.
need, so then I should be able to look up all the event IDs and whatever the event content. So possibly I need to replicate my possibly I may need to replicate my system
Mhm.
in a dub. I mean, both of them will contain this same information, but for easier, faster write and faster read accesses, I should be able to have my system stored in like two ways. One is where like a event ID, and the other one is where like a start time. So that
So,
is what I can. Mhm.
so do you think like these two tables are good enough for you?
The other table which we had, like, I don't know. Okay, just let me hide this. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So, yeah, for based on our discussion for the RSVP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Possibly for a given, that could be a simple key value pair too, where the key event itself is the event ID, and the value can be the user IDs who have accepted, or like whatever this the RSVP status. So these are the different
Can you?
things which I can.
I'm not able to see the
Oh, okay.
download of this. So
Okay.
could you scroll
Uh,
down?
okay. Let me like move it to the up. Actually. Can you
Okay.
see it now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can see it
Oh,
now.
yeah. Okay. So I can think of like these three tables for now, and a simple key. So I'm thinking it should be a in terms of cache, right? Usually, like most of the events, which are like 20, some of the events are usually famous, like all hands meeting or something like that. So I will try to store them in a cache, and if it is uh, very frequently used, and the rest of them in a like a regular regular storage system.
Okay,
So I
let's do one thing. Let's walk through by use case how the booking a meeting for any time is going to work, and how
okay,
the yeah. Let's talk with one sample use case flow. What you are going to do into it.
sure.
So I want to book a meeting. Let's say
Okay.
just.
So let's say we want to book a meeting, right?
Mm-hmm,
So basically, user will be posting an post an event,
mm-hmm,
which means that we will be sending um, all the requirements as we discussed before, and event through an API gateway, we will be hitting the load balancer of the event handler service, and the event handler service itself does process all the input from the post event, and it will try to store the details in a cache. Basically, I'm thinking in terms of a write through
let's
cache.
forget about cache for now. Like,
Mhm.
so
Okay.
you said like post event will hit the API gateway, and then the gateway will redirect to event handler service.
Hmm.
Okay. So,
Um, yeah. So
mm,
basically, what the specifically event handler service does is like
mhm,
event handler service. It will take the details, and it will try to see if there are any. Okay, let me think. What specifically the event handler service does is like it will check for any. It will take the event details, and it will check for the conflicts, and um, and it should basically pop. um, it will basically just show conflicts, or I'm just thinking what is the use case of having even showing the conflicts, or if there are any like already out of office messages, it will just send an um, I think that will be like a little bit of a too much for an event handler service right now. Thinking in terms of notifications, right? Uh, Event
so,
handler service. Go ahead.
mhm. So how, like, tell me different ways event handler is going to respond. What's your target, like, idea of response, like
Okay,
status?
sure, that's good. Um, so one pretty use case is like where we accept the all the where it some of the invites doesn't need a response actually. So in that case, it it just need to push a notification to all users. So in this case, it is not no it is not expecting any response. And some of the use cases where if it is like a one-on-ones or like a regular meetings, it expects a response whether and can an event be scheduled or not. So there can be like we should be able to process like if we are allowing the users not to book a calendar out of the office hours, we should be able to push back it right now. So this is one of
Mhm.
the use case where event handler should be the response. And the other response I can think of is like if an maybe we can come up with some fancy techniques, then half of them are already booked and we should not be able to allow the event to even exist. But
Are you going
I
to
think for
respond?
now, for a simple system, this
Mhm.
Mhm. For now, for a simple system, these should do. Whether we decide not to respond, whether if it fits under our basic rules, then it's okay to post the event and go ahead with where there is like a you can say that it is like a success. Basically, where there is like a as soon as it fits under the regular rules, we
Mm.
can call it success. If not, like we can throw one of these exceptions
Okay, so your response will either be success or like
or
failure.
failure, yeah, or failure with yeah, with basically the error logs.
Do you need like to respond the logs for an API? Okay.
No, we
Yeah.
don't
The
need. Basically, since this is a
mm,
post, it is better to have the for an user. He needs to know what was the reason not to schedule a calendar. So it is better to show an error because this is an organization.
mhm.
But if not, like we can also just throw an success or failure, but it will take a little bit time for the user to troubleshoot back.
Okay. So let's say like
So
you're scheduling.
mhm.
Um, okay. Let's finish this. Like, which are all the tables are you going to write? Like, what event handler is service is going to do after accepting the request? After
Sure. After accepting the
which
request,
tables?
so for a it should be
Mhm.
able. Mhm.
Which tables
So
it's going to
basically,
use to clarify the conflicts? Let's say that. How,
conflict, right? So hmm. So for a given event ID,
mhm,
we should be able to check each user's calendar, and we should be able to see
mhm,
um, whether an user is already booked or not. So for that purpose,
mhm,
for a given event ID, we can check all the users underneath it,
mhm.
and I think we should be able to update the first. We should be updating all the tables, but for the conflict resolutions, I think we can use this one, the first table, where we should be able to know whether any user has an conflict or not using this table.
But your key is event ID, right? Like how do you think how you are going to pull up the attendees availability for that time?
Sure.
So
Okay. So for okay.
you
So
don't
for
have
a
a table
given
serving that.
okay. Yeah, that's a good one. So like for a given event ID, I should be able to look up all the user IDs, and since we already know the attendees, and since we already know the start and end times, we should be able to know whether if conflict exists or not. Um, so we
Mm.
should be able to handle it in our what we can specifically. Okay, or to make things much simpler, we can have one more table where what is the for a given user ID, what are his free time slots, and we can make it like more brute force way, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay, so like for a
So how that
sure. So the table will be like a user ID and basically time. You can like a start time or like a duration, and it is like availability. So for any given user and for any given time, we should be able to look up his availability, and it will be one more like a simple key value pair loop, where the key will be like a user ID, and the values will be rest of the details actually.
So what's the availability values, like that column values?
The availability value is like whether if he is already booked or free or tentative or something. So for
Okay.
mhm.
Okay.
And jumping further, right? Like once I have the details stored in the DB with all these tables, and I should be able to basically it should be a bidirectional where I should be able to read as well as write. So my user should be able to read. Basically, it's the other way around.
Actually, the
Where
creator is the one who posts the event, right?
oh yeah, that's good. So let me
Mm.
so creator and invite basically he will read event and as well as the send RSVP, right? So send RSVP. So he should be able to send the RSVP and we should be able to store it back in the DB and our event handler service should be able to take care of that. So
Okay, so let's take a scenario in the interest of time. How are you,
mhm,
two users are booking um, at the same time, like the
mhm,
assume the invitee list is same. The two users are like, let's take just one person also. Two users are
mhm,
like scheduling a meeting with one person in the same
mhm.
time. So how are you going to um,
Sure.
resolve that
Uh,
scenario?
Great. So event post ID is more of an sending. So okay. So what I would do my in the post event is like so as soon as let's say uh, so let me just write it over here. Let's say there are like two users, okay, where the both of them are creators, and
Mhm.
he has done a post event with possibly whatever is the
Let's call out
event
the,
ID one.
yeah, don't specify the invite ID, but like the, what I'm saying is like just let's say the invitee is user 3 and
Uh-huh.
the for both the events invitee
Hmm.
is user 3 and the timing is say, let's say from 10 to 10:30,
Okay.
and both are submitting the same request. So
Okay. Okay. So sure. So it is okay. Let's say he submitted the event ID is at like 10:30 a.m. right? And
mhm,
let's say he submitted a request like a 1 second before the user ID or at the same time. It doesn't matter.
mhm,
So let's say since let's take go for the corner case, right? Where both of them are submitting at the same second.
mhm,
So what we do here is like we will check in the DB. So
mhm,
we will go ahead and block a calendar, and we see that the user 3 is available, and we go ahead and block a piece of it. It doesn't mean that we can't block another time slot for the another appointment for the same time slot. We should be able to block it, but unless and until we hear any response or like RSVP from user 3, he should be able to basically accept one event or both events, or like basically deny both events too basically. So user 3 has a flexibility to um,
no, your solution is like you are allowing them to both create the um, events at the same time, like meetings at the same time, and leaving the decision to user 3, or like you don't
yes,
allow the same time.
I will preferably allow the same slot bookings, and I will leave the decision to the user 3 to decide uh, whether he should be able to go for the meeting or not through the send RSVP API.
Okay. So is there a reason behind that, like why you allow that, and like
Sure. Yeah, the thinking behind that is like in terms of like as we go top of the ladder, for all the executives and for all the directors, I see like meetings are always like double booked or if not more. So and also some most of the higher level management, they want to be in the loop but not technically attend the meetings. So denying the meetings right off the bat, like it may not be the right choice. So that is the reason why I would like to leave the decision for the user three, that is the invitee.
okay. Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
like since yeah, that's okay. That's your thought process. Um,
Sure.
I think we are about time.
Just I
Uh-huh. Do you want
so
to identify the bottlenecks, like what your system is capable of and like what it's not currently capable of?
sure. My system, like let's say we are thinking in terms of like a 500k users, right? There can be like 500k events per day, which means that if we assume that there are like 100k events, there are like 100k seconds, right, per day. So we are thinking about like in 5 events per second. If we are not able to meet the API constraints, then possibly we should be having a queuing system where we put all the events in a queue, and we make sure that there is some kind of an computation going on, and then write it into a DB. At the same time, the other constraint which I see is like some of the events are more read than the other of the events, and all of the events are read at the same time, which means that whenever there is a, like an top of the hour, everyone goes and try to read the post. So it is basically a read heavy. At that point of time, it will be like a read heavy system, and we should be able to push have all of those like near occurring events in the cache rather than in a DB, because in the cache it is more easier to read maybe like cache or some other possible cache systems. And the other thing which I was missing here is like a reminder mechanisms, where I should be able to like for any given event ID, I should be able to poll it, and for every like possibly like 10 minutes before for a given event ID, I should be able to poll, and I should be able to look up all the attendees, and I should be able to push a notification saying that your meeting is possible in next 10 minutes if they have already accepted the meeting or so. So and what else? Thinking
Mhm.
in terms of scalability, um, once it goes beyond an organization, like an organization can go beyond like 100k people. So we also need to make sure, um, like
Like instead of the scalability, let's go to your high level diagram and just think
mhm.
like whether you made like considering the DB modeling scenario, what are your bottlenecks? Like is it going to support all the scenarios? Like because you have duplicated the information, what are some of the challenges with this duplicate information?
Okay, yeah, okay. So with the duplicate information, yeah, since we know the constraints of storing, right? So we are storing the information in like three possible ways for our easy lookup, but at the cost of like a storage constraint. So we should be able to keep storing. If you are thinking basically for the availability and for replication purposes, we should be able to possibly shard it, and for high throughput as well as availability, we should be able to shard as well as the replication techniques. And for sharding the things, we already have like a keys, so we should be able to shard it based on the keys, and we should be able to replicate it in the sense that if it is if we want to make sure that it is like a low latency and disaster recovery system, so we should be able to replicate it many times. I don't think this is as far as like a geo distribution is concerned. User can be in anywhere in the geo in the world. So I think with the sharding and replication, we should be able to accommodate the DB modeling. And as far as the sharding technique is concerned, here for this table, right, I
Mhm.
can like shard it based on an event ID, which means that range-based event IDs, right? Like for a event ID is just one more sequence number. So if the sequence number starts from 0 to 10, I can have it in a shard or similar thing. And as far as placing these shards in the servers is concerned, I will use like a consistent hashing technique for placing of my shards in the server, so that whenever I add a new shard or whenever I delete a new shard, I should be able to still accommodate the changes without any further disruption to my existing shards.
Okay.
Thus,
Yeah,
I
I think
think that's
we are good. Like we are, I think, little over
okay.
time, 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
Okay,
So,
great. Okay, sure.
okay, I think this was a good discussion. So let's open up like to the audience, and they'll give their own feedback, and then
Okay,
like I'll also give the feedback a little later.
sure, sure.
Um, yeah, thanks for attending and giving this mock interview. And I was not on video because like my internet is like little bad today. So otherwise, like, okay,
No, yeah. Thanks for taking this.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
okay. So let's open it up to the audience to see if anyone is willing to share their feedback.
So hi, maybe I can go first. I think I have
Yeah.
more of
Mm.
what I would say is a product question rather than system design, the sense of conflicts. And I think you guys touched upon it at the end. And I think the whole thing of handling conflicts has made this design quite complex. Because I agree with Sujit in the sense that the calendar should care least about conflicts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I, as a meeting organizer, want to schedule a meeting, then it should just go and schedule that, right? It's the responsibility of the invitee to accept or reject if they don't like my meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So so this whole thing of conflicts has given a totally different twist to the design, and I was just wondering if it was really needed or required. Maybe it was something that should have been explicitly clarified at the start, in the sense that the calendar should definitely respond with an error in case either any of the invitees has an accepted meeting, or that it should just go ahead and so. I think this was one thing that I was not clear of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't clearly specify that in the requirements, but like I just wanted to understand the reasoning behind. Like it's there is we can't like in a mock interview we can't like list all like 100% true requirements. Some of them might come up little later, but like I just wanted to see how Sujit is going to respond to that question and how what's his thought process.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. So I think my feedback was good for Sujit, to because I think if you remove the conflict aspect, then you can remove a lot of complexity from the design. So if in an interview you are you feel you are going in a direction which is quite complex, then maybe
It
explicitly
is not
clarify with the interviewer.
complex, like, but the general intent of anybody scheduling something is like majority of the people available, right? Like that's part of the identifying conflicts. So there are like I
Yeah.
agree like some exceptional meetings like all hands or something which overrides everything. I mean like let's take that out of context. I clearly gave like the 1% scenario, right? Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
reason. So, like
Mm-hmm.
the intent of both people scheduling at the same time is assuming like they see the calendar available when he's scheduling the meeting, but it is not otherwise. Like when server knows that like both were trying to do the same time. So Yeah, I agree. It's kind of again product decision, but like it can be added to the requirements or like it can be
For sure.
skipped.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
I had a question.
mhm.
Sujit, two questions actually. One is, why did you choose a key value pair versus a relational database? That's one. And second is, how do you handle recurring meetings in your design?
Okay, great. Um, okay. So yeah, let me answer the second question first. I didn't think of recurring meetings. That's a good one. Um, I should be possibly have the one more argument by name like a recurring and possibly like a whatever the duration, right? If it is recurring, I should be able to accept one more argument, and my event handler service should be able to basically post that many block that many time slots in my DB. So that's a good one. I didn't thought about it, but that is how I would like handle if you ask me now. And coming to the key value pair, right? So for the key value pair, right? So all we need is like thinking in terms of usually for if you think of a reading post as like a one of the API, you always look up based on an event ID rather than so since there is already a key to it, I can easily go ahead and look up that particular event ID. Or if I'm looking for a particular user, whatever is the availability, I can just go ahead and look at his like an user availability. So I that is the reason why I like tend to move towards a KV database. So it can be KV database can still be a row oriented, and that should be okay. So yeah, that is the reasoning behind it. And I can be wrong or I can be completely off. Yeah, but that's a good one.
Thank you. For the second question, you mentioned that you're going to create an event. That event would be persisted in the database. So if I have a recurring meeting, like for example, for 6 months, you're going to create 6 months worth of events and persist in the DB, or you're going to create one event which says duration is for 6 months for recurring event. How many?
So the event will be a single event when I'm posting it, but my event handler service should be able to block that many things in my DB in my calendar, which means that um, in my okay, so that should be that will be like many events, right? So the once I posted a single, okay, let me go through this example, right? So okay, so once here, the event post ID will be a single URL request, and my event handler service should be able to generate like these many rows. Like there will be one event ID for like for this week, and next week there will be another event, and the possible next week there will be another event. So for this user ID, there will be like if the recurring is like times, there will be three rows added to it, three rows added to here, and three rows to everywhere. So that is what I'm thinking.
So if like a group of people have recurring meetings, for every person, you will have one row added for the duration of the recurring meetings.
True, true. So the reason behind that is like given an event, it should be a unique one because the maybe the agenda for it might change, or the we should be able to modify it at the later point of time. Also, like possibly we should be able to cancel only that event, but not the other events. And also the invitee list for that event may change. So we should be able to. That is the reason we are going.
This is a suggestion. Like, I don't know whether that's the right way, or the reason why I'm saying is, if there are four people, and there's a recurring event, then and that one recurring event happens like once a week, then you're going to have four events per week times
Mhm.
four for 1 month times six for 6 months. That is 4 into 4 into 6 uh, uh, events in the DB. And if you want to update an event, now you have to update 4 into 4 into 6 events in the DB. If
Yeah.
you want to change the time again, you want to update all these events. If you add a new user or change the subject, these many DB calls is required for just a change. That's my thought
Okay.
process. um, yeah.
Yeah. Sure. That's a good one, Sri. Like I see like there are both pros and cons. Like yeah, I think it can go either way, but that is a good feedback. Um, yeah.
Yeah, good points about by Sri Prasad. Yeah, again, like there is again, as Sujit said, like there are both pros and cons to that. So, so any other feedback from others?
One point I had was, by the way, this overall, you organized it pretty well and presented it pretty well. I was really impressed with that. And then the other aspect is we did not talk about eviction and removing of the events from the DB. Like, when do you want to remove?
Yep.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
interest of
So
time.
no,
So,
that's a good one. Yeah, good one.
yeah.
Like I think I should have like probably covered them in the API so that at least at least interview might
But
have like a little bit idea. At least I know something. But that's a good feedback. Yeah.
why do you want to evict events? Like, if I want to go back and see what all were my meetings like a year ago, I should be able to see those events. So why would you want to evict it?
Otherwise, infinitely it'll grow, right? So some sort of condition, just a mention about it is also fine. Just that you're thinking.
Yeah, we normally, yeah, don't delete unless the user has explicitly deleted. For deleting part, like there is no, I mean, like we didn't talk about APIs itself for that because it's of, I mean, like even I thought it's not of much value, like given the current time, and it's just a mock interview. So yeah, people generally delete. I think that's the only case we want to explicitly remove from their calendars.
Yeah.
Um,
I think for delete, right?
Otherwise, mhm.
We have some concept of, hot spaces and cold spaces on the storage level, right? So anything which is very old, right, we generally put it into like cold storages,
Mhm.
um, so that it's not even deleted, but it's usually just for reads, because any data older, right, is not generally updated. So it's generally for reading purposes. So what happens in this case is that your current state, and all the new events and all the upcoming events will be on the data storage, which is hot, and all the older events can be moved to another storage or another DB, yeah, altogether, something like archival, instead of deleting them.
Sure. Yeah. That would be one more. That's a good one. That would be one more rule on like why not to keep things in which things we should keep in cache or which thing we should possibly move into a regular storage. And if it is more than 3 years old, possibly we can have a rule like possibly like for you, even in the organization, right? If you store it in the GCP for more than a year, or like even your mails will get archived actually. So this is a good use case to archive them actually. Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyone else like to?
Yeah, I won't take it. Yeah, feel free to like criticize. I'm all up for it. Yeah.
Good
the key
attitude,
value
Sujit.
database. Hello.
Yes, Anwar, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I have a confusion in the key value database. Like key is the start time and value is the event ID and extra. Like how do we handle their start time? As he said that user can create many meetings at the same time, and it's his responsibility to which one to accept. Like let's say that at 12 noon there are 5 meetings starting for the same person. I mean, in the key value in database, how we will store that all the things related to the same person, that these meetings will be started at the same time.
Sure. So yeah, the more I think about it, I think like these two tables, I think maybe possibly one of them should do like the user ID start time duration, or the other table like which starts with the start time, and possibly I should stick with the table which says user ID start time with the key as user ID. And because for a given event ID, we should be able to get all the user IDs, and we should be able to look up the other table. So initially I started with this, and then I think Naga has corrected me to go here, but yeah, that was my thought process. But if you ask me now, I possibly don't have a my third table, but that is my thinking.
Yeah, I mean, like we didn't have much time. Like otherwise, I was even thinking to discuss on DBs more because like we didn't go through the read use cases. So
Yeah,
yeah.
we didn't talk about the horizontal or vertical scaling, right? If he is
Mm.
using the SQL, or it cannot go horizontally scale, right? If he's using no SQL, then we can horizontally scale. We didn't went in depth in that scenario as well.
Yeah, so as far as that is concerned, like, yeah, usually since this is a key value based, right, I was mentioning about the range-based partitioning, which is usually the horizontal sharding. So yeah, I would possibly, if you ask me that now, I would go with an horizontal partitioning. Yeah.
I have an additional feedback. So I think Sujit, you started really well on the back of envelope calculation. So maybe if you can go up a bit. So and it's really nice because it seems to be quite important in many companies. So now please tell me if I was not paying attention. But I just felt that you could have done a bit more follow through on the back of envelope. So in the sense that, okay, so you have 100 bytes. So based on this, what have you inferred? Uh, let's say, I mean, one of the use cases for these calculations is how much data you would need to store, which tells us how many databases we would need and how many shards we would need, or what are the number of reads or writes per second, which and that tells us how many nodes we would need in our application, right? So, I mean, so you came up with these numbers, but I was missing what you did with these numbers or how this influenced the design. So, if you did say this and I was not paying attention, I hold my hand up and say sorry.
No. I mean, yeah, that's a perfect valid point. So, I think I like dragged a little bit in the data modeling and the architecture, but I was thinking to cover it in the scalability. And the moment I say scalability, I got to know that I have 2 minutes, but that is definitely not an excuse. So yeah, given let's say like I have like 5 more minutes, I should, I mean that I think that is where the differentiation happens, and I should be able to calculate the number of possibly the how much of a TB or a GB that we would end up using for a 3 years or like whatever the number of time, and then I should be able to come up with a number of like servers, as well as what is the throughput. Possibly do we need like an API parallelization or so on and so forth. So those are like basic things which I should have probably made it into the interview, but I couldn't touch on that. Yeah, based once I have that, I should like possibly should be able to figure out how many shards I need, and yeah, that's a really valid point, and I didn't cover it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Kartikeya. Anyone else?
So I had a question. Can you
Mm.
go down to your design a little bit? The design, yeah. So user creator sends a post event, and the event handler, I feel like writes to the database and sends in like it sends the read event and send RSVP to the user in invitee. Like, what happens if that request fails? That sending request fails.
Oh,
Like, how would you
the
know that? Like, user
so
created send
sorry. Are we talking?
user creator sends a post event to event handler service. Event handler service persists that event into the DB and then sends a response back. What happens if that the user invitee response? Like, what happens if that fails? I know user invitee never got the response.
Uh, User invitee never got the response. So what I thought. Okay, let me rephrase your question, or at least I understood. So a user posted an event, and it is there in the DB. So what if user doesn't respond to it? Is the question, right?
No.
Okay.
Say user creator is the person who creates the event, right? Like who creates the
Uh-huh.
right. So user creator invites user invitee. That means user creator will create a post event, and that goes to the event handler service, correct?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And then event handler service passes the event to the DB, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then he sends a response back to both user creator and user invitee. Is that correct?
He doesn't. Yeah. Okay. That's. I mean, so what I was thinking is like it goes ahead and blocks in the calendar, and there should be a response or a notification to
That
the user invite.
notification
Yes,
never
that's right.
reached user invitee. How would you ensure that?
Oh, okay. So this is more of an API fault tolerance itself. I didn't think about it, and I don't know how to even answer that. Yeah. Any ideas on that is really great. Yeah.
User creator always sends a user invitee also in the event handler, right? So
You
User
mean the event ID?
in the event ID, that's what I didn't understand what that event ID comprises of. Does it comprises of like some metadata about the user and the user invitee? Like how would event handler know to send the user invitee anything? Like is that
There's
part
an
of
invite list, right? In the post event.
that
So
contains the ID or that contains the email ID or what does it contain?
that will contain the email ID, and then the email ID can be replaced by the user ID, right? While building.
Actually, I think event ID, as far as I understood, was deferred to event handler service. Is that correct, Sujit? Or um, are you still thinking the creator sends the event ID?
Mm, so so with our architecture, initially we thought about having an event ID by the user, and later we shifted it to the event handler service generating an event ID.
Yeah, so let's assume that event ID is generated by event handler service. So in general, like this, suppose like if user creator generally doesn't get a response, that is the case for the scenario, which is brought up. So he normally tends to submit the same request again. So in these cases, like the idea of event handler service should be idempotent. Like if the same thing comes up again, the effect should be same. Like it shouldn't create another duplicate entry. It should overwrite it, or um, and then like or just it should if there is another traceable ID end to end, then it knows that we have already got this request and reject, or like those are the two choices, right? One thing you go ahead and overwrite the entries, or you just learn that this event has already been processed and you just respond with that event ID.
Correct. And
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
Also, there should be a user service, right, to identify the users. Right now, user creator is the person who knows about the user invitee. I feel there should be some sort of a service which tells the event handler that, okay, for this ID, this otherwise user creator can create any arbitrary user who's not even in the system. Um,
Yeah, correct. Like, yeah, I mean, like technically, yeah, there is, I mean, like this is just like the mock interview, right? Like to in a real system, you have all the, I mean, like we should be able to look up the users in a calendar and and we have to confirm this is the right user. Like, I think he used alias terms, like most companies have that unique ID of the user.
okay.
So, I mean, like as long as so in this case, let's assume event handler service does that validation. I think that could be one option. So sorry,
Um,
Sujit, like I'm getting ahead of you. You
but
wanted to say something?
I have a small confusion with your first question. So for your first question, right, where you said that the response fails to the user invitee, right? By response, you mean the notification for the event?
Correct.
So that notification for the event need not be an API call, right? It could be like a Kafka message or some form of like asynchronous
Yeah,
messaging.
that's what I also thought. But Sujit mentioned it's a part of the API. That's where I got bogged down.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
Oh,
Mm.
I sorry, like I missed the question. So if the question was about sending a notifications from the DB to all the attendees, or like is it about event handler responding to user creator that you are
Uh,
creating succeeded,
so,
like just to
so
the client, not to the actual creator anyway.
let's suppose user creator creates an event, right? It goes to the event handler. It creates the entry in the DB,
Mm-hmm.
and then will in a loop will send notification to all the user invitees. Probably like there are like 10 guys, right? So it will in
Yeah,
a
that
loop.
should not be the responsibility of event handler, I would say. Like, yeah, Sujit, like, tell me, yeah, you can add also since the interview is over, I'm just chipping in. So it should be something after the DB. DB should trigger some notifications or like add to the, it's like a post processing, I would say,
No, but
not as part
event
of,
is service, right? Not a DB.
I didn't get you. What was the question?
Uh, I'm saying event handler is a service, right? Not a DB. Correct me if I'm wrong. So,
Yeah, that's a service. It stores in the DB. And as soon as it stores in the DB, like as part of post processing, like since event handler service is doing a lot, it can
okay.
do some post processing. Like that post processing could be like add this event to some queue, and you have another service which dispatches the
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that
there should be a,
notification.
uh, at the end there is some service which is sending some form of message, right, to the to all the invitees, right? So I think Shri was asking that whether that failed. So
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, we didn't actually talk about that specific component. Yeah.
some sort of a notification service which does all the
Mm,
notification.
yeah. So now, like some of the DBs also support the uh, enabling a notification as soon as some write event occurred or something. So we can use those kind of DBs, or you can
uh,
manually poll and
I think, right?
I
You
didn't
don't,
get
you don't
Yeah,
need
that
DB, right? Like once event service handler persists the event in the DB, it can like add it to this queue.
skew also. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Q. I mean, so sorry.
Mm,
I mean, this is how I usually write the queues. Yeah.
mm.
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
that's a good one actually. So I think since we don't need to rely on any one of them, like it is just a push notification. So having a queue will make sense. Yeah, thanks for that. Possibly for a send RSVP, it will be an API, but for read, for post processing, we need a queue.
The other way around also, like if that queue, if sender is always offline, it can just add it to the sender's DB or the user invitee's DB, so that the next time the user comes up, it looks at its own DB and find out all those events that it did not get notification. It did not, queue need not keep on like trying to notify if the user is offline after a certain threshold.
Sometimes the notification is just an email, right? Like email with the event information.
Like for
So,
example,
and with an options of RSVP. Is that like?
sure.
So it can be sent even if the user is offline. Once he opens the inbox, like he can whether normally accepts this or
Sure.
whatever.
What happens if the email service fails? I mean, there are many ways that this can. It's a distributed.
Yeah, correct. Like it's a distributed system. We talked about very little part of it. I mean, like the since like the just the calendar aspect. There are like many other dependent service. One could be like a dependent notification for sending, or like the email service to send. And to validate the users, you need to depend on another service like the directory in the organization. So yeah, I mean, like there are.
The other approach I was thinking is like the event handler service need not always directly write to the queue, or would it? The reason being, what happens with the DB is down, and the user creator.
DB is down, then your availability is gone, right? Like you should have some alternate replicated DBs.
Would it help if you put a queue between the event handler service and the DB and send a response back to the creator immediately? Otherwise, the request is like waiting for a response, and if your DB is down,
Yeah. So yeah, that's part of again like there are different patterns of implementing, right? Again, what you want to achieve out of this. So that's that pattern that you're telling is kind of right through. I mean, like you're not actually writing to the DB and returning, but just adding to the queue and returning. So
it's not
just you know. Mhm.
So I believe since it's an AP system, right? I don't get the use case of the queue. If some database is down, right? Then since it's a high 100% availability, then there will be a master slave nodes, right? What happens if your master is down? Then the re-election happens, right? So there would be a new master from the childs from the slaves, right?
True. I'm not disagreeing with that. Yeah, true. You will have a master selection. I mean, all these are holding the request from the request creator until all these things happens, and that is what I was trying to avoid, the latency.
Okay, I mean, like basically, it's kind of if let's say, I mean, like I would go for that kind of a scenario if we don't want to see any conflicts handling at all, like which is normally done by event handler service. If we want to avoid all that logic, or like we allow all kind of creating events, then I think that makes sense. But like,
In this case, he's
mm,
allowing
mm.
all the events to be created without any conflict. The user invitee has the power to like accept or invite. Anyway, all the events are being created, isn't it? Like, did I?
Yes. But like it's yeah, I mean like I'm saying like if that is the case, like you can still do that, but like um
Like, there can be
mm,
multiple back-to-back bookings, and the user invitee can choose not to attend any one of them later. But in his calendar, there'll be like multiple bookings for the same time slot.
mhm. Okay, any other things, or like I can quickly give my feedback also. Sujit, I think you did a very good job overall, and I liked like your thought process, like across to all my questions. I'm at least satisfied with your reasonings, and with respect to time management, I think the mock interviews, some organizations tend only like 45 minutes strict. I mean, like it depends. Some people have 1 hours. So depending on the time range, I think you need to crunch down your APIs and data modeling part and just focus on what is the key. And yeah, so I think if you can just try to come up with, I wanted to cover a little more in this architecture, like the read flows and also a few more scenarios if possible. Like if yeah, that could be done like if we crunch some time little up. I think like the more you practice, I think the better you can get at it. And yeah, one part I also felt is like after taking those numbers, I thought you were going to give me some number of servers or like the DBs that you need. But like maybe I see that you parked it later for scalability. Uh, but it's good to know that like if you come up with those numbers. Or like you can just say that like I'll come up with the numbers based on this. For now, let's assume this is the numbers. That's also okay. Mm, And yeah, when I asked for bottlenecks, I really wanted to know, like, given the current number of tables that you have, is there like certain use cases that would go, which yeah, I basically wanted to evaluate your DB modeling and what scenarios it's going to work well and what scenarios it's going to work late. Like what are scenarios where you will have higher latency because you need to do multiple things, like looking into multiple tables. So, and also on the event handler service, whether you want to decouple for read events or like send RSVP and post event. Right now it looks like it appears like everything goes to event handler service and it does everything, but like ideally I would I think like the more tightly coupled you have for multiple flows, the more bottleneck it has on that service.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it's good to decouple those services.
Okay, makes sense.
um yeah, but like otherwise, like I think you did a good job. Like you just need to focus on the time and like reserve some time for at the end, like 5 minutes at least, for discussing some of the bottlenecks or any other questions that interviewer needs to ask.
Sure, sure. And yeah, I mean, so I should have rushed through the API and data modeling. Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe in the yeah, I think what might have taken time is like in the API you just talk about the params and like this back of the envelope calculations could be done only fast, or like maybe you are discussing about the fields in the API design, like
Okay.
in detail, maybe which could be done part of data modeling. So,
Okay. Okay. Makes sense.
or you could do data model first so that you know all the fields, then come up to API design so that like you just know which fields to accept and which fields to respond. So,
Yep. Okay.
mhm.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, otherwise, like we had a good discussion, like even after with all the participation from the audience. So I like this session overall.
I have one more point of not
Mm,
using the queue. Like,
mhm,
let's say that I'm scheduling a meeting right now and my DB is down. Then, in
mm,
this case, you will send the event to the queue and you will respond to the user that we have got your calendar, right?
mm.
So, but when a worker will pull out from a queue and our DB is down, then what will happen in that case? Since we have sent the response back to the user that we have processed your event, since it needs to be all the invitees needs to be logged in at this moment. In this case, they cannot log in at this moment because our DB, we have not saved our response in the DB, and we have just given the wrong information to the user that we have processed your event.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like, thanks for bringing this up. I forgot to give one more feedback to Sujit. So, depending on your experience, Sujit, like if you're targeting more senior roles, like you should also be focusing on monitoring aspect, like which means like you gave some guarantees in the design, right? Like um, availability and partition tolerant. So how do you make sure, like in this case, like for this scenario, so if some of the DB is down, what's the time? Like you should get some alerts to fix that immediately. Like you should have some monitoring system in place. So, and also the sharding and other things, like to make sure you have enough replicas to be available. If one DB goes down, also other thing, other DB can take over. Like the same thing can happen to event handler service. What if that is down? So you should monitor all the key components of the system that we are designing. So it's kind of implicitly assume that you bring that up in the mock interviews as well, depending on your expertise level. It might not be asked for a low experience, but like the more higher experience you go, it's kind of a must.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, in this case, like to your, I think I forgot, Anwar, I think you were asking the question. So since Sujit already said that it's kind of availability oriented system. So all key value databases that you choose today, NoSQL DBs, you can choose the one which is more availability focused. So it kind of offloads a responsibility for you, that like by keeping enough replicas in the background. So and making them as master, like if master fails. So all that is happening in the background. So or like you should make sure that like and you should have a monitoring system to make sure that that's happening. And yeah, so in that case you should not see much delay with respect to, even if database is down, it should be quick enough that another has taken over, another database node has taken over, and you should be able to process the events from the queue. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm. Any other things people want to call out? Like otherwise, we are at 10 minutes. Um, we have 10 more minutes. We can discuss, or like we can end early.
So yeah, one question, Naga, like
Mhm,
about like this tables, right? So do you
mhm.
prefer to have these 4 tables, or like do you have any suggestions over there?
Yeah, so basically, I would, so since you have chosen NoSQL, like key value database, so how I would like to structure NoSQL databases, like the key value is kind of NoSQL, right? So you have to drive by use case. So the RDBMS is like, you have one table for user, one table for event, one table for RSVP, all that. But like for key value or like the NoSQL databases, the general pattern is you have to consider what's your use case. Like one of the use case is saving, like the read use cases mainly. So read events, like as a user, like if I have to load my calendar for 1 week and see all the meetings, what's the best data structure, like the key value store table that you can design. So your key should be able to optimize for user. So one of them, you have the availability, just the meetings, but you don't have a full view for the user. So if he wants to view for, but like that's a very common use case, right?
Okay. So
Mm.
given a scenario, would you go with a SQL or like this key database here?
I think I'm fine with key value because like it kind
Okay.
of offloads, but like only thing is you have to clearly prepare your use cases. So because you don't have a lot, I mean, like if I stress on conflicts, then I would go for RDBMS. But like
Okay.
since we took off the table, I was okay for even key value, and so for the key value, you have to drive by use case. Like for this use case, whether this table makes sense. So you have the data duplicated across multiple views. So each view is kind of serving one particular use case.
Yeah.
So so that keys need to be tuned. So in this key value database, the key, and you also have some kind of sort keys. You have some partition key and you have some sort keys, which organizes the data uh, that you want according to your use case. So
So both the partition key and sort key are the same, right? So are they different?
Yeah, it depends on how you tune them. Like you don't always need to give the sort key. So you can just give the partition key itself. That's enough for the table. But like it's how you design, right? Like what kind of sort keys you select that are relevant to this use case, which can help us pull like get to the actual shard and return the data quickly.
Sure. And coming to that event ID generation, right? So
So in
how
this
would you do it?
case, yeah, so in this case, like the sort key could be your time. So because I mean, like with user, let's say with user and time, like if I have to, I can quickly get to his availability, right? So whether he is available or not, if you use like user ID and start time as a sort key.
Okay.
I have a question, Naga.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here we are using NoSQL, right? Key value pairs.
Mm-hmm.
So, but our use case is where when the user creates an event, right? So it should write both in the, I mean, both in the event table as well as in the user table, right? So for the NoSQL databases, how do we ensure that since there's no transaction in such, right? So how do we ensure that the write is reflected in both the tables and not some partial writes or partial updates? Is there some way to ensure that?
Yeah, I mean, like it's not again a transaction kind of thing, right? Like it's commit in both only and then respond. NoSQLs, like you can have a mechanism. It's again like you who are designing both the views. So you normally typically just add to the events table, and then like you have another processing which takes all the attendees and puts into the user table later. Um, I mean, like you can have another processing mechanism from the. It's up to you, like whether you first try to the events table and do some processing later, and then try to all the users table.
Yeah, I understand. So, do you think that in this particular case, right, in the Google Calendar case, MySQL would be a better choice than the NoSQL? Just asking your opinion.
Yeah, if I'm not stressing on conflicts, I'm okay for using NoSQL. So you can still use SQL because in either case, but like again, you're there. Like if you are using SQL, again, you can you have the guarantee event to resolve conflicts there because you have the option to use transactions, and but the
What do you mean by
availability and all there again the way you get.
Sorry, Naga, like what do you mean by conflicts? Is it like row-based conflicts or is it like meeting conflicts?
Meeting conflicts, I meant, sorry. Yeah.
So
So
why
it
do,
says,
okay, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, it's again, I told it's again the decision of product, right? Like if product
Okay.
says again, I don't want to accept conflicts. In
Okay.
some cases, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
One question I had, I mean, if you go with key value pair, So did we talk about how we will do kind of a fan out, or is that not required? So let's say I schedule a meeting with 10 invitees. Based on the current scenario, all of those invitees are just part of the value somehow. But eventually, this event needs to be scheduled on their calendars also.
Yeah.
So
So actually, yeah, I think he added a queue. I think that's not pretty clear in the architecture. But the idea is like as soon as you can have it as an asynchronous also, that's my opinion. Event handler need not actually write that. It will kind of an additional responsibility. So in this world, in today's world, you have many DBs which support not what is that, streams. So let's take an example of DynamoDB. It's you write some entry to the DB and it supports a stream. So you can have another Lambda processing those and spinning of notifications. So or you can send the request to email service. So it's kind of after scheduling the event, you can have as a post processing mechanism. Yeah, change data capture is a term. Yes. So whenever something changes, updates, you can send a notification. So was that clear?
yes. So what you're saying is a queue will look at the event and then either so
Queue will
posting
not look.
notifications is
Queue will not look. Let's say I'm writing to DB, and with change data capture, like it enables a stream. So if you have that enabled, then that automatically sends a notification. Like you can have a Lambda which puts into the queue, and you have some other system or other Lambda which pulls from the queue and spins off notifications to all the attendees, or calls the
okay.
email service to send a notification. So it's up to you. And
Okay,
if you
so
don't
in
have that change data capture on a database, you can still periodically poll, or like in that case, maybe event handler adding to the queue also makes sense. But like the moment you have an additional step in event handler service, it's adds to the latency. So as long as you are fine with that, um, that's okay.
okay.
Yeah, I would like to take a moment to thank Naga, Kartikeya, Sri, Anwar, Ankur, and Rekha. I mean, those are like really a good learning for me, and I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sujit, for participating. Let me stop.
Thank you, Naga. This was a very good question.